And a very good morning to you. We're live in London. You're with Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson. Coming up today, my guests share their views on the week's biggest stories. Terry Stiastny, David Bodanis, warming up for Christmas. What have you spotted, Terry?
Well, I'm afraid it's not a very festive menu, but we've spotted lots of stories essentially about power, shame and disgrace. And also a bit of sabotage thrown into the mix there. And perhaps we'll talk about overeating.
Thank you. Good time for it. How about you, David? What have you spotted?
I've been startled that the weather is warmer and warmer and warmer every year at Christmas, and everybody takes it for granted.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed for that. We'll be heading to Tallinn too, to the Christmas market from Petri Burtsoff. It's the 21st of December 2025. Live from London, this is Monocle on Sunday.
Live from London, this is Monocle on Sunday with Emma Nelson.
Hello there, everybody. I've got Terry Stiastny, author and political journalist, and David Bodanis, speaker, business advisor, best-selling non-fiction author of The Art of Fairness, The Power of Decency in a World Turned Mean. Welcome to you both. How has everybody's week been?
It's been a sort of week of getting ready for Christmas. It's the usual sort of the house looks a bit like an Amazon warehouse with parcels coming and going, getting everything, all the people and all the objects into the right place ahead of Christmas.
You sound like Father Christmas from the Mr. Men. All the right toys for all the right boys and all the right toys for all the right girls. How about you, David Bodanis?
Somebody once said that authors are not absent-minded, despite what people think. They're actually present-minded, except somewhere else. So this past week, to my loving family, I've been smiling and they've seen the external form of my body, but inside I've been flying into another place.
Go on, tell us about this place that you've just been flying to.
The problem with this place is that I'm married to a lovely woman, and
there seems to be nothing wrong with being married to a lovely woman.
There's many wonderful things about marrying to a lovely woman, and one of the key things, which I recommend to all listeners who are married to such lovely women, is to not bore them with incessant details about your writing problems, such as, oh, this paragraph is not going well. Rather announce, I am writing a secret project. When it is finished, you shall be able to read it from beginning to end, and I would love and value your comments. Until then, not a peep.
Okay, so does this now mean that you've actually come on the radio, having bored your lovely wife with the details, intimate details of the book that you're writing? You know I'm going to bite. You're now going to tell us about the intimate details of the book to the rest of the world. Having run the course first with Mrs. Bodanis.
Mrs. Bodanis is probably the only person who doesn't know what the book is about.
We're all ears, David. Go on. We're going for it. Go for it.
Gypsy Rose Lee learned most of what she knew from Tessie the Tassel Twirler, a famous Chicago stripper in the 1920s, who my father saw when he was in his 20s, in the 1920s, Tessie the Tassel Twirler. And she was famous for saying, never dump the whole roast on the platter. You always have to keep the customer hungry. So this book is about a really interesting woman from the past, about which there's about 5 or 10 pages of information. I once wrote a biography of a really interesting woman from the Enlightenment, about whom there's entire shelves of books. So you could fill in the details, what was going on in the background, sometimes what people were saying from moment to moment. In this one, when there's 10 pages, you have the overall lineaments, but you have to imagine what their world was like. I grew up with 5 big sisters. The chance to be a medieval girl for a year or two was just wonderful.
So there's obviously something deeper going on inside Mr. Bodanis' head that you're going to... This is more than cosplay, isn't it, David? Tell us who this woman is, or was.
I really haven't announced it to the world. Shall I break it through to Emma? I'll break it through to Emma. It turns out in the... Actually, if you don't mind, I feel I'm being a little bit like Tessie the Tassel Twirler.
Okay. Keep your clothes on, David.
In about yes, in 2 years, also will be revealed. But it's interesting. We can how there's a lot of feisty women in movies. Often they wear tank tops, they work out on their shoulder muscles and stuff like that, and they do all that stuff. And it's a weird ideal. You have to be feisty and positive, not let anything bother you. It's unrealistic. And it's many people, when they write historical novels, they do the same thing. They pick a character and then they imagine she's 2025 or 2026 and full of energy and like a soccer player who's really happy and never depressed. And it's not realistic. So I thought, what if somebody pushed through adversity and became successful in a sense, but do it in the realistic way, realistic to the time and realistic to the uncertainties we all have. So I suppose that's the real idea.
Okay, Terry, this year you brought out a book about realism and uncertainty. Well, it's about sabotage and spying, and it's brilliant. But does that ring true with what David is talking about, that when you create storytelling out of things that you don't have a full picture of?
Yes, I found that really interesting. So I've written a couple of novels, and this is the first time I've written a proper history book, but I have a kind of allergy to kind of crossing the streams of the two things. So I tried to be really careful when I was talking about the historical people. There is a tendency in some history books to just to sort of imagine, and they were walking down the street on a beautiful sunny day and they were wearing their favourite purple suit or whatever. And I think, well, how do you actually know that as a historian? Unless you've got the receipt from their tailor and the weather forecast for that day. And I found myself getting really obsessive about not putting things in that I had imagined or that I didn't actually know. But luckily for me, the people that I was writing about, they kept loads of diaries, they wrote loads of letters. So you did have that insight into what their internal life was like.
Just remind us about what your book is about.
My book
you
is
can
about,
tell us what's in the book because we can now read it.
It's in good bookshops, etc. It's
You're
called
putting the full roast out.
Yeah, I am putting the full roast is available and has been for a little while. It's called Believable Lies, and it's about the team of people who created essentially British fake news propaganda during the Second World War, and they were quite a rackety bunch. So they included people like Brendan Bracken, who was the British Minister of Information, who was an absolute fantasist about everything in his life, made up tall tales about who he was and where he was from. People like Robert Bruce Lockhart, who had been a British spy during the Russian Revolution, was captured and put in the Kremlin and then exchanged in a prisoner swap. Richard Crossman, who was sort of really ambitious would-be politician. Elizabeth Barker, who was sort of... There were actually lots of women who worked in this organisation, and she was sort of quiet and kept herself to herself, but actually was really clever and was running whole sections of this secret organisation. So, an interesting bunch.
Thanks for that. Right, we're going to bring in Petri Burtsoff because he's going to be with us for the next few minutes because he's out and about in full Christmas. He's our Helsinki correspondent, but you're not in Helsinki, are you? Good morning, Petri. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas, Emma. Indeed, I'm not in Helsinki. I'm standing right in the middle of the town square of Tallinn in sort of like surrounded by this beautiful Christmas market that Tallinn is famous for. And I don't know, you can maybe hear some carols in the background. People are gathering up. There are this beautiful stall selling all kinds of, just looking around, sort of Christmas ornaments, but also wonderful woolen knitted handicrafts. There's a stall selling what looks like a blood sausage and some pork belly, and lots of stalls selling glühwein. And I'm going to go and get a glühwein at some point just to keep myself warm because it's a bit chilly up here, this far up north.
Are we going to be doing the glühwein while we're on the radio, Petri?
Let's see if I can pull that off. But the thing is, they don't just do one glühwein. That would be too easy. There's, I'm not kidding when I say there's probably 20 different types of glühwein, and they like their sort of seasoned glühweins. Glühwein obviously is seasoned to begin with, but they go really overboard with the Estonians with this and this. So like every year there's a competition of who has the best new recipe for glühwein. They take it seriously. So I can't promise that I'm going to taste all of them because they're about 20% strong in terms of the alcohol content. But I'll try to taste a couple at least.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind taking 1 or 20 for the team, we'd be most grateful. We may get you to take us to the glühwein stall, maybe not at 8 minutes into the 9 minutes into the programme because we've got 51 minutes left of this and we need to obviously keep you coherent, but at some point we'd be very, very grateful if you could do some glühwein tasting for us. I'm quite interested in the idea of Tallinn's market. I mean, that square is glorious. When you walk, you go. It's within the walled town, isn't it? And it is just so magical. You never even believe that this place exists. But the fact that the woolen knitty handicrafts and the blood sausage seems to be a priority. Is that a thing for Estonia?
I think it definitely is. I have to say, it's actually nicer than it sounds. It's beautifully curated handicrafts. This is not just the touristy stuff that you see all over the place, but it's actually like handmade. The women who knit it are actually the ones who are hawking it here, and you can talk to them and sort of talk to them and ask them where they live and how they make this and how they learned the craft and all that. But just the setting. The only thing missing. This is a sort of a 12. I believe it's 13th century, 14th century architecture. Really, sort of like when you if you would Google a gingerbread city in real life, this is what it would look like. Just beautiful, beautiful architecture. surrounded basically also by this tall spires of the city hall and a massive Christmas tree right in the middle of it. And then there's a big stage also. There's no performances on right now, but I came here last night. They had a children's choir singing Christmas carols. They have these merry-go-rounds, these like old-fashioned merry-go-rounds that look nice instead of when you go to modern amusement parks, it's not always a sight for the sore eyes to go there, but it's actually, it just looks very nice. It looks magical. The only thing missing is and we can maybe do some audio photoshopping of some snow into here, because it's been a super mild winter. Also up in Helsinki where I live, we haven't seen any snow. It's sort of +7, +8. We're talking like Zurich temperatures, or maybe even London temperatures, and not a hint of snow. So that's the only thing that I have to mentally Photoshop to this Christmas market. But I'm sure it's coming at some point.
Petri, we have Terry Stiastny and David Bodanis in the studio with us, and we'll all be piling in for this one. David, you mentioned at the beginning of the program, we're going to go straight into climate change, because that's what Petri's just talked about. And you've said that Christmases are getting warmer.
Yeah, and I suppose what I'm really struck by is people are kind of accepting it. They say, oh, yes, when I was younger, there was more snow and we built snowmen, or children remember snow days from school. And we kind of accept the window of acceptability is changing. I'm wondering in Finland, is it changing the nature of how Finnish people spend their time? They often define themselves as tough dealing with snow.
Petri, this is that's a sort of an existential question for a Finn.
It is. So that's actually a very pertinent question. I think for Finns, we're still lucky in the sense that we have Lapland, and I was in Lapland earlier this week, and they have proper winters there. It was sort of -20 and a meter of snow on the ground. So what I've seen, at least in my circle of friends, is that more and more people choose to spend Christmas and Christmas holidays in Lapland, because in most of Finland you don't have that sort of magical white Christmas that we all had when we were younger. So but yeah, it's we are of course privileged that we can just take a train and go up north and do experience that magic. But it's something that a lot of people are talking about. And on a personal anecdote, I mean, I actually grew up just a little bit outside of Helsinki in the countryside, and it was always a family tradition to walk into the forest and chop down a Christmas tree, and you do this sort of like early December or sort of mid-December, and all the photos I have from childhood of picking up the Christmas tree, in all of them there's snow on the ground. And now we've had many Decembers without any snow in the south. So this is also like a sort of I mean, of course, in Finnish we say that time makes the memories golden, so you always tend to remember all the nice things of your childhood. But this seems to actually ring true, that if it was snowier, and then David, you have some data there to back this up. But yeah, we Finns usually travel to Lapland to experience that magic.
How about you, Terry? You were nodding when Petri was talking about chopping trees.
But that just brings back a real memory for me, because my father was Austrian, and sometimes we would go and spend Christmas in Austria, and we used to do the same thing. We would go up into the forest and cut down a Christmas tree and bring it home on a little sledge. And it seemed like a combination of magic and stealing. I wasn't sure if you. I'm sure we were allowed to take the tree from wherever you got the tree, yes. But it was quite a sort of Snoopy moment. And as you say, as you remember, Petri, and I remember the roads being absolutely piled high with snow, the roads being clear, but meters and meters of snow. And once got into quite trouble for dropping my very little sister down into a big hole in the snow, not realising that was actually quite a dangerous thing to do.
Yes, so. in Austria, that can actually be called a mountain, which is quite difficult. Actually, you're the first person I've ever met who's stolen a tree.
You were allowed.
Talk us through the process. We're absolutely all ears.
Well, no, you just...
whereabouts in Austria?
This was in Flachau, so near Salzburg. It's a big ski area, and my aunt had a flat down there, which was where we used to go and stay, sometimes when we went for Christmas or when we went skiing. And yeah, I was always slightly surprised, because I think she knew what she was doing. She knew she was allowed to do it, I assume. And we just walked into the edge of the forest by the side of the ski slope and cut a little tree down. It wasn't a huge one, and then sort of put it onto the little wooden sledge and brought it back to the flat.
That's a very good point, actually, in terms of size. Do you ever do that thing that when you go into a shop and think the thing gets bigger the closer you get to taking it home? Like you buy a lamp and you think it's going to fit in the lounge, and then it is actually the size of a small tree. How do you gauge the correct size of a tree? I'll come to you, Petri, in a minute on this one. Actually, Petri, I'll come to you. How do you choose the right size of a tree?
Well, you look at the size of your home, I suppose, and then it cannot touch the ceiling because it still has to fit a star. But yeah, they come in all shapes and sizes. And now when I have small kids, I also have to think about how they're gonna decorate the tree. And while I'm talking to you, I'm also trying to purchase a glass of glühwein. So let's see how this goes.
Okay, so this is now where we do live radio. And have you done the deed yet? Have you done the buying?
Yes, I have. I have the glühwein. No receipt, thank you. I have the glühwein in hand. I'm kind of boring. I went for what looked like the most traditional one. So let's have a taster here in live radio.
Just to get a little case, it's what time is it? Where are you? About 11:15 in the morning.
Yeah, something like that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's a perfectly good time to start drinking 20% proof warm drinks.
Oh my God.
Okay, talk us through it, Petri.
Yes, this is very strong. Oh my goodness! But it's very nice. It's very. I mean, it's about. I would say it's maybe like +2, +3 here at the moment this time of the morning, and just having this warm, steamy drink in hand, it does feel nice. But oh my goodness, the alcohol taste really comes through in this one. And then this is just the standard one. The locals they add local liquor, this Tallinn liquor. They add that liquor to this, so it's even like I opted for the weakest option, it would seem.
What's in it?
Oh my goodness!
Tell us what's in it.
Okay, well there's all the traditional glühwein spices. I can't list them to you right now, but you all know what I'm talking about, what glühwein tastes like. And a hint. I get a hint of cinnamon, definitely. It's cinnamon is very strong here, but even stronger than the cinnamon is the alcohol here. I don't know if the vodka is the base here or whatever kind of liquor is the base, but that's the first kind of a taste sensation I'm getting. But maybe that's because it's a taste that I've been getting for since last evening, basically when I arrived here, because I took part in a traditional Estonian Christmas feast last night, and let me tell you, that was also quite sort of alcohol heavy, mind you, amazing food, but also copious amounts of different wines were consumed. So I'm getting used to this way of celebrating Christmas.
We're so glad that you're taking a hit for us. This sounds like a terrible time that you're having. Talk us through the Estonian feast, because I've had a few Estonian feasts and they're enormous. They go on for hours and are delicious and gorgeous, and you can barely stand up.
Yes. Okay. So first of all, this was not sort of the most traditional Estonian feast, because I know I've done that too, and that involves all kinds of like blast sausage, and it's super heavy, and you don't eat for like 5 days after that. So this was more sort of refined. It was actually in a one of those fancy Tallinn downtown restaurants called Le, but it included. I mean, it was still heavy, mind you. It was sort of. I remember having glazed. I had this pork belly in Calvados sauce. I had a onion pie, and then I had then I had for dessert I had the dessert was sort of more of a French pastry that we had, then some potatoes as well, some radicchio, some there were some fried onions there as well. Now that I list all the stuff that I ate, I actually realized it was quite a feast still, but although a bit more on the refined side. And then of course a wine to match each different dish of that feast.
Well, thank you for still being upright. And we're going to ask you to sort of maybe go a little bit easy on the glühwein, because like I said, we still have 41 minutes of the programme of listening to Petri Burtsoff get drunk live on air. David Bodanis, just listening to all that idea of. I just love the fact that we're talking this morning about traditions. That suddenly this all floats to the top of our heads. Suddenly, Terry gets the cue of cutting trees down and what have you, and that idea of tradition being hugely comforting.
Yes, you can understand why populist movements draw on that. We often think of populist movements from the outside. We see angry people yelling. From the inside, it's consoling. The notion of going back, we know economically, blah, 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 it's hard to go back literally and people have a fantasy, but the inner feeling is comfort. I think human beings have at least two personalities. You look at the newspaper and the front page is chaos. There's headlines about this and that. You look at some of the feature pages and there's something nice and cozy. The British Sunday Times usually ends up with a life in the day of, where everything's cozy and then they go back to sleep just the way it always is. So we have chaos outside and we have comfort at home. And sometimes we want to explore. It's fun to go out to a new place. And the ideal thing is do something like going skiing. Because if you go skiing, it's cold and refreshing and you don't know exactly what's going to happen if you're going fast down the slopes.
If you're going to live or die.
Or like me, if you don't know if you could stay upright. But then you go into a lodge and it might be like steamy and warm and there's comfort there. There's like this awful thing the Swiss people do to potatoes, or the things with alcohol in Finland. And it's familiar and you've been there before and it's welcoming. And also it speaks directly to you. It's kind of like astrology. In a complex world, astrology pays attention to you right then and there. And things from the past are like that, because who else had your past?
Indeed. Well, lots of us had our past because we all start to tap into our collective past, don't we? And you're talking about the fact that, the Austrian connection is huge, because suddenly you find yourself, I don't know whether we sort of look quite, we have lots of German markets, for example, that are exported all over the world. And they are exported as a traditional German thing or a traditional Austrian thing, because the sense is that when it comes to tradition, when it comes to Christmas, that place does it better than anybody, Terry. And so, the fact that you went to Austria as a child is an indication that you wanted the best kind of Christmas that you could possibly imagine in terms of traditions.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I think one of the interesting things is how, particularly if you're a family where you've got different traditions, how you merge those. And I think it's always a little bit contentious because, as you say, David, everybody remembers their Christmas as being amazing. But then you find within families, people have sort of arguments about, what time do we open the presents? Do we do that, immediately first thing in the morning when you wake up? And then I know some relatives who open the presents after lunch on Christmas. And you're like, well, no, that's just wrong. Everyone has this absolute idea of how they do Christmas and how their way of doing it is right. And then when you create your traditions for the next generation, you have to work out, what are the things that you want to hang on to? And so we're talking about Christmas trees. So I always try to. So in Austria, you put up your Christmas tree, or you don't put up the Christmas tree. So the Christkindl puts up the Christmas tree while children go out of the room. So you you go out of the room on Christmas Eve, taken off for a little walk somewhere. You come back in, and as if by magic, the tree and all the presents have appeared under it. And so I find the sort of the British thing, American thing, where people put up their Christmas tree in, early December or November. I was like, the magic's gone by Christmas. You kind of want to have it as late as possible. And my kids don't really understand that one. They're like, no, we want the Christmas tree up at least by the end of the school term.
I was thinking another thing about this. Most of the time when you're at home as a kid, the parents are either really worried and busy about external stuff, and when you're home as a teenager, everybody's looking out, focused on their friends. Or if you are at home as a kid, the parents have to be functional. Yes, you're spending time with them and they seem to be looking at you, but they're feeding you or getting the clothes or bathing you or blah, 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 blah. The Christmas time and other holidays and other traditions is one of the few times where everybody has a little circle and they're facing each other. Even the arguments about when do we open the presents, you're all looking at each other and speaking to each other about a shared family activity. How often does that happen? Very rarely.
Indeed. And Petri, how often does that happen where you are? I'm assuming you're still on the line and flat on the floor.
Yes, Emma, and I actually sent you some photographic evidence in case you can't hear the audio of me sipping on Glühwein. But how often does sort of families getting together and looking at each other happen? I fully agree with what David said. It's a magical time for families to be together and actually be present in the moments. And even in Finland and in all the other countries with teenagers basically being glued to their phones. Emma, you would know all about this. It's just that there's something magical about Christmas when you have the meal together and you wait for the Christmas presents to be, if you have young kids, maybe Santa Claus comes over, depending on the culture where you live. Maybe the presents have been delivered already, during the night, but still opening them and sort of seeing what everybody received and who's been naughty and who's been nice and all that. I think there is a level of magic and sort of almost this like childishness in a this child-mindedness that is a very nice thing that we somehow, I think, we become so sort of cynical as societies that I personally really love that time. And Finns, I think of any sort of nation in Europe, we do take Christmas very seriously. Of course, we claim to be the home of the Santa Claus, and we even named a whole month. So December in Finnish is called joulukuu, Christmas month. So that should tell you something about how seriously we celebrate Christmas. And we rebrand Finnair. During the whole month of December, we rebrand Finnair into the official Christmas airline, and it has this Christmas livery. And it's a very serious. Well, when I say serious, I mean it's still lighthearted, but we take it very seriously affair. And you see it in south of Finland, you see it in north of Finland, of course, in cities in Lapland like Rovaniemi. It's their whole sort of cash cow. That's how they make most of their money, just in a couple of weeks around Christmas when everybody travels there. But you see it in even smaller towns and villages all over the country.
That's some really clever marketing done there by Finland, isn't it, David?
Yes, because you could say you could be proud of anything. You could feel desolate. Finns, I believe, have been known in their existential writing and their alcoholic evenings to feel desolate. It's cold, it's dark, blah, blah, blah. Or you could take the exact same thing and flip it around. And again, if you think about it, that's what we could do with families. Oh, we're stuck home with the family for a few days, as opposed to, hey, we're home with the family for a few days. It's entirely a mental shift. And it's kind of a reminder of what we can shift into.
What does that mean?
It means that we don't do it on our own. It means that we need the community and traditions to remind us, to push and boost us to become the better people we can be. Left on our own, we kind of like dissipate and dribble and spread out like sand blowing in the wind. But with a little bit of push and turn and a little arrangements around us, lo and behold, a good thing happes.
And what's quite nice is you telling us just before we came on air, Terry, is that your son is creating his own tradition today.
Yes, the two of them have, so they seem to have invented a brand new tradition as of last night, I think.
Were they at that Estonian dinner?
I don't think, no, they went to an Estonian dinner. But they've sort of decided that since today is the shortest day, they are going to head out and spend all day in the daylight. Certainly my older one he doesn't like the sort of the long evenings and the lack of daylight, and he likes to be out of doors. They both like to be out of doors. So they decided, which is quite rare for, early sort of 20-year-old and a 17-year-old to actually get up this morning at about 7 o'clock, be up for the sunrise, and to go and spend supposedly all day until sunset just somewhere in London outside so that they can enjoy the daylight while it is there.
How long, if you were to do that, Petri, where you are, would they be outside for about 20 minutes?
Yeah, that's about right. Well, in south of Finland, I think there is, let me see, the sun comes up at around 9:30, sunset around 3:30. So, there's 6 hours of sunlight. But then up in Lapland, when I was in Rovaniemi, I counted, 3 hours of sunlight. And obviously, if you go to north of Lapland, there's no daylight at all. It's more than a month where the sun basically just doesn't come up, because that's how far up north it is. But I have a funny story to tell, because it's been a very gloomy December in all of Finland and no daylight whatsoever. And then it was on Friday last week. The weather forecast said that, hey, it's going to be a sunny day for once. And up until then, there had been a total of 15 minutes of sunshine. I mean, obviously more daylight, but like actual sunshine, like seeing the sun and blue skies up until then. And then we had a whole day of seeing the sun and blue skies. And then, Finnish TV actually did a live broadcast of the sun coming out. Helsingin Sanomat, the main daily, did a big feature on people just like leaving offices to gaze at the sun. And I actually took, being a freelance writer, that's one of the luxuries of, I just decided, okay, I'm not going to do my copy now. I'm going to go outside and go for a nice long walk. And there were so many Finns. This was sort of like, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I saw hundreds of people out and about, just taking in the sun. So when sun comes, when it is such a premium, and you don't see it for weeks on end, essentially, and then when it finally comes out, you just appreciate it that one bit more, and you don't even care if you have work to do. You just go outside and take in the sun rays. I mean, it was still like -5, but it's we're not sunbathing. But we are.
I love that. Sunbathing in the middle of the darkness. This is glorious. Now, David, you have written about community, culture, humanity, but you've also written an awful lot about the sun and space and time, haven't you? So what does this now... Basically, David's in the studio to explain what everything means today, Petri. What does it mean, David?
Most of the time we can spend our life in an office in air-conditioned places and beautiful interior design. In Finland, very much beautiful interior design. But occasionally we're reminded we're these tiny little dots on a giant rock that's floating around in outer space at high velocity. And all around us is this great blackness, but there's a bit of sloshing water and some hilly mountains and these like mammals running around and stuff. Imagine there you have a political leader who spends all his free time, going through a forest. Somebody like that, walking their holidays as hiking and stuff, they would clearly feel for the planet. Now imagine you have another political leader whose only time outside is on a golf course, which is manicured and clean and crisp and guaranteed, or watches sporting events that are inside air-conditioned stadiums.
Maybe some wrestling.
Maybe some wrestling. But to think about the golf course versus forestry, and I have to say golf has many wonderful advantages, but if you live only in that world, the world's manicured, the world's safe. It's a little thing you've made for us. The fact that in Christmas time, the days are getting shorter, that's a power greater than anything we can deal with. I remember once in Chicago when I was a young lad, or a teenager, I was about to get mugged by 4 very unhappy people. Well, I was very unhappy. They were probably fairly happy. And it was a difficult situation. I was in one of the overground trains that they have in the city of Chicago, and it stopped somewhere and there was nobody else around. And I thought, this is not going to end well. There was a storm going on, and then the storm got worse, and the sky got really dark, suddenly very dark and windy. And suddenly, it wasn't 4 guys against 1 going to have some fun. It was like 5 human beings. So what the hell is happening out there?
Right. Okay. You're listening to Monocle on Sunday with me, Emma Nelson. Terry Stiastny and David Bodanis are in the studio in Tallinn. On how many glasses are we now down to? Petri Burtsoff is doing some live field work for us. We're having a live experiment. We're putting alcohol inside Petri Burtsoff at 11:30 in the morning. We're not entirely sure of the wisdom of this one, but how's it going from where you are, Petri?
Well, more and more people are gathering at the Christmas market now. I think it opened its doors just a little bit before we went on air. Looking around now, hundreds, close to 1,000 people maybe here now. The shows haven't started yet, but there's families with kids are just pouring in, and almost everybody I look around, everybody has, me included, has a nice cup of glühwein in hand, and people are actually, I mean, if I look around, they're also buying handicrafts and Christmas decorations, not only here to see the massive Christmas tree and drink some glühwein. And I mean, I hear a lot of languages. I heard English, Italian, Spanish, but also a lot of locals. So, I mean, that's what I like about this Christmas market is that, Tallinn, the old town of Tallinn, it's, for those who have been, that it's very beautiful, but it's also very, very touristy. Estonians don't have, they can't afford to live in the center of Tallinn anymore, and it's become also the restaurants right in the center are more sort of on the touristy side. But then when the Christmas market is on, it becomes sort of a rallying point both for the tourists and the locals, and everybody just seems to be in good spirits. And I think there's cities could learn a thing or two when we think about touristy cities. I mean, I've spent many years living in Rome. Sort of, it's not always that the locals and then the visitors mix and go to the same places. It tends to be quite divided. And I just love seeing this kind of events and places in very touristy places where the locals and the visitors get to experience the same ritual, get to experience the same place. And I think that's really nice about this Christmas market.
Petri, we're going to let you go for a bit because it sounds as if the connection has had a glass of glühwein as well. We're going to talk about some news, and then Petri, if you'd care to join us once again in about 15 minutes so you can bring us up to date on the latest from the breaking news story in Tallinn market, which is it's nice. 9:34 here in London. Petri, thank you so much. Don't go away. We'll come back to you. But just listening to what Petri was saying there, Terry, we were talking before we went on air about how the fact that London is empty.
Yes, certainly travelling around, just going to visit friends and going to town. I think, so Thursday evening I was around King's Cross, which has got a lovely shopping area now. It used to be absolute grotty, now is really nice. And you noticed that people were either going to the pub, going to the station to go home. And I think one of the things that has changed is people have left London really early for Christmas because of working from home. So Thursday evening is now sort of Friday evening, and everybody seemed to be like, right, I'm leaving London now and I'm not going to be back here working possibly till the new year.
There's a very naughty expression expression for that?
Yes, there is,
yes.
which we probably won't say on the radio.
I'm going to say
yeah.
Twats.
Twats. Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday. So the people who only work in the office.
You heard about this.
On those
Never.
days, yeah.
This idea that, Tuesday, Wednesdays and Thursdays.
I love it. It.
We don't really... Does that say something about us about we really don't want to actually want to do much work? Or are we a lazy bunch here in the
Who
UK?
does? Because the thing about work is it's externally imposed. There's some things that come from within and you're full of energy. Some people who will pay no attention to school whatsoever, if you take them to a recording studio for music, they come alive. Think of ourselves. We're sluggish. It's the afternoon. I don't want to do anything. And then a really good friend who you haven't seen in ages is in town. You're full of energy. You shower and you just do all this cool stuff. So much work comes from outside. Think of the things that people lie about or confabulate about. Those tend to be jobs that something comes from within.
Now this is something that you wanted to talk about, isn't it, Terry? That we had a Labour peer, senior member of the British government, who told tales about their qualifications.
Yes, there was one a Labour nominee for the House of Lords who had claimed that she had a PhD, which she didn't. And she was an education specialist, had worked on a lot of issues, and people are now, questioning. I mean, she's 72, so this is something that presumably she had claimed a long time ago. She claimed that she had had this PhD in 1978. And I suppose the question is, if you have got away with something for so long, and this touches on a lot of other issues that are obviously in the news at the moment, should you be called out on it? Should you apologise? At what point, is it inaccurate to boost your qualifications and your CVs? And it does this then, I suppose, ruin the rest of your life once you are called out on something from a long time ago.
Why do we lie about what we've done?
I think all of us recognize gaps. I spent a lot of time reading autobiographies, and I was reading the autobiography of, I think it was Tommy Franks, the American commander in one of the Gulf Wars, top American general, and he didn't brag about how fit and strong he was because he knew he was fit and strong. He bragged about how good he did in a code-breaking course, which involves his mind. And repeatedly, when I read military autobiographies, that's what they brag about. When I read autobiographies of intellectuals, they don't brag about how smart they are, unless they're like really inadequate people. But they tend to really recount the one time when they were a kid and they stood up to a bully, when they were physically strong. Tommy Franks never had to talk about that, but a gentle intellectual at MIT does. So we tend to brag about things that will fill in the gaps and will help us.
And the issue for this woman now is that she's not a young woman. She's not actually trying to get ahead. This is a retrospective discovery.
I know a couple things come to mind. One is that we often don't begin with a huge lie. We begin with a slight exaggeration. For example, she had done a certain number of courses, which I think she had a French qualification, which was similar to a British qualification, blah, blah, blah. So you sometimes let people go with an assumption and don't correct them right away, and then you kind of fall into it. And then the other thing happens. Our societies are wildly formally qualified. Think of the fact that this woman did all her jobs incredibly well. People really liked her. The fact that you have to jump through this hoop, which helps if you have a wealthy family and stuff, seems kind of unfair. So you can see, really, do I have to say that I've done this?
There's an excellent article. We can continue talking about this in the context of Jeffrey Epstein, actually. There's a brilliant article in the New York Times in the last couple of days which lays out all the things that Jeffrey Epstein did in order to get where he was. And he started off as a maths teacher in a school. And he met someone who said, actually, you're in the wrong job. You should be in finance. And so he went to work for, I can't remember the name of the company now, it's just springing to mind. But he was caught out because he had said that he had gone to 2 top universities in order to get to where he was, in order to get through the door. And the boss, whose daughter Epstein was dating at the time, the boss had to call him in and say, right, you have lied. You should not be here. But Epstein turned around and said, well, if I hadn't put that on my CV, I wouldn't be here. And as a result, the boss, whose daughter Epstein was dating, gave him a second chance. And it was this whole story of second chances, second chances, second chances. And now we have this thing coming out in the last 24 hours, 48 hours, don't we, Terry, of all the pictures of all the powerful, mainly men, all of them men, in compromising positions.
And I find this is not, obviously there's so many layers to this story, and there's so much information here. And it's, obviously there's a big political row going on now in the United States about whether all of these files have actually been released, whether too many of them have been redacted, whether some of them have been withdrawn that were previously released. And obviously everyone's going to argue, about the politics about this, about what it says about people in power. And one of the things I just find astonishing about this is, you say that about how, Jeffrey Epstein has sort of fabricated his CV at various points, and just how easy it is for people later on to be believed, but also how people were totally happy that there was a trail of evidence of what's going on. And obviously people's recollections differ, and people say a lot of them didn't know what was going on in terms of what Jeffrey Epstein was up to in terms of trafficking young vulnerable women. But how many photos there were. And it just surprises me. Maybe I'm just not cut out to be involved in something like this. That if I were doing something where I thought there was even the slightest sort of sniff of wrongness about it, I would be so worried about being potentially caught out. I would not let people take photos of me. And so to see these thousands and thousands of photographs where everybody is with Epstein, they are in the jacuzzi, they are in a palace, they are in all of these places. They either didn't think they were doing anything wrong in these environments, and also, Jeffrey Epstein, was he keeping photos in order to hold stuff over people later on? Or was he, again, just going, this is my life, I'm just living this, and I don't, I'm totally happy to have people taking photos of me with these very young women, mostly.
It's about boundaries, isn't it? And structures not nowadays we are telling our teenage children not to take photographs of themselves under any circumstances, or indeed share it, because that once that photograph goes, it's no longer your picture. But that idea that in that moment, when you take a photograph in whatever circumstances, you feel as if it's just the capturing of a moment. It's not actually a permanent record of anything.
I think there's a couple of. I think I begin everything by saying there's a couple of things.
Yeah, which is fine.
There's a couple of things.
We're grateful.
One is that world, when you're inside it, is sort of hermetically sealed. If you're one of the popular kids at high school, you tend to be nervous because to become popular you have to push, and you're within this world, and you kind of ignore all the stuff outside. In fact, part of being popular, part of being at ease or smooth, is that you're not paying attention to what is outside. Have I ever told you my Jeffrey Epstein story? I have
You're just about to.
Funny you should ask.
Tell us your Jeffrey Epstein story.
A generation ago, I was speaking at one of the big TED conferences in Monterey, and when it finished, people were standing around, and there was a handful of people had private jets, and there's this one guy who was offering rides on his private jet back to the East Coast. I emphasize I did not go on the private jet, but I was standing with the people who were. I had spoken, but I wasn't a big enough deal. And the people who were standing around were looking at each other. There weren't women, maybe one or two women, but it was mostly guys. There was, I think, Marvin Minsky, the MIT professor. There's Dennett, the philosopher. And they were very excited because professors don't have the salaries for private jets. And around them, looking up with kind of glee, was this snivelly little shrimp, and that was Jeffrey Epstein. And you mentioned about him lying to get into a job that he wouldn't get into otherwise. He wouldn't have these people stand around. He was a high school math teacher, which is a virtuous and noble thing. I've been a high school teacher.
Where's your private jet, David?
Exactly. And here, nobody could say that to him. He was around with all these big, fancy people. There were top literary agents. There was anybody from Hollywood, because he was offering this beautiful show-off thing. And so he was looking up, he was cavelling. He was happy beyond measure that he was needed there, this little snivelly guy looking up. And the other ones paid very little attention to him. They looked at each other and said, oh, I am so in the in crowd, and I'm even getting a boost.
Right. So this is all about, with Epstein, obviously, as you said, it's filling in the gaps.
Yes.
And explain a little bit more, therefore, about the why people go for this. Why, you talk about your philosopher and your professor all realising that they're going to go on a private jet, which in theory, which is nice, very nice indeed. But what is it that makes people drop their external principles? I mean, there's stuff that Terry was talking so nobly about earlier on, saying, "Well, if I realised that I was in a compromising position, I wouldn't have my photograph taken."
So some
that idea about why you want to be part of the party.
So some of it is a selection issue. There was another friend of mine who once was in London, and Jeffrey Epstein was coming to London and wanted somebody to walk him around the British Museum. And so because of Epstein's power, the British Museum was closed for the evening, and he had a private tour. And this person walked him around and said, guy's a creep, and never saw him again. So the people who refused to go to the island, or the people who didn't get on the airplane, or the professors from MIT who didn't want to do it, we don't know about them. They're just a huge... Epstein talked to thousands or tens of thousands of people over the years. People talk a lot. And many people didn't want to be a part of this at all. But think of somebody like Clinton. Clinton always gets what he wants. Bill Gates always gets what he wants. And repeatedly, you get whatever you want. So for some of these who are, for the more twisted individuals, it was young, vulnerable girls, especially vulnerable, incredible power if they had any insecurity. For others, it was just, I'm in the center of the coolest crowd that there is.
And that's the pictures that we seem to be getting. That some have been taken down off the government website in the last few hours, which is causing quite a lot of problems because people are saying, what are they hiding? But briefly looking at the photographs last night, there's Bill Clinton in a swimming pool with Ghislaine Maxwell, and there's Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, sort of spread across a series of knees. Sort of enjoying himself, sort of almost like a sort of, I don't know, some cheerleader girl. But these are people who are clearly enjoying themselves and feeling as if this is the most natural place in the world.
Yes, and I think Ghislaine Maxwell is a really interesting sort of case study in this because she was one of the people that Epstein picked up on after her own father had been in disgrace and died. And she was obviously someone who had grown up thinking, I'm kind of entitled to all of this. I'm entitled to this wealth and power. And then suddenly it all disappeared. And then she got sucked into a new world and obviously, serving time for what she did. But you can see that she was possibly vulnerable as well in that way because she had this and lost it and wanted to get back again. And it's quite interesting looking at, there's an article in the Daily Telegraph this morning, which is Sunday Telegraph rather, talking about a therapist who deals with people who have been somehow disgraced or cancelled. And it's just really interesting to see what happens to people when they lose that kind of in being in the in crowd, being successful, being famous. And she describes her clients about when she meets people there at their lowest ebb, says they're not able to see beyond the wall of fire they're facing, so they tend to lash out. They feel the world is against them. They might be crying, angry, shouting, confused, or in a state of shock. They're right in the eye of the storm. Now, she obviously, as a therapist, has sympathy for these people, but I find I don't have an awful lot of sympathy for them because I think in most cases where people have been, cancelled or disgraced like this, they have brought it on themselves through their behaviour. And one of the reasons it comes so hard is because they don't understand what they've done wrong. They don't understand that they might have harmed people or hurt people precisely because they have got away with their behaviour and been allowed to get away with their behaviour for years and years in many cases.
Let's move on to another story that I think you wanted to draw our attention to, Terry, which is Putin smiles when your Wi-Fi fails. It's a brilliant article by Mark Galeotti, he's a voice here on Monocle Radio as well. We love having him on because he has that really sharp view of conventional warfare. And this article is wonderful because what Putin is doing, according to Galeotti, and this is what the new head of MI6 is warning about, is that petty sabotage is the thing that wins the war.
Yes, I find this an absolute fascinating article, not only because, I was talking about the book I wrote earlier, which was looking at, wartime propaganda and sabotage were seen as sort of two halves of the same whole. And I think Russia very much still sees things in the same way. But I found one of the really interesting things is that how we respond to it, particularly in the West, not only in political terms, but also psychologically. And one of the things Mark Galeotti points out here is that although there obviously are Russian attacks, things like drones, for instance, things like sabotage on cables and all sorts of other things going on. And it says, this highlights a virtue, he writes, of the new strategy for the Kremlin. It encourages and mobilises our own paranoia. And he's saying that many of the alleged Russian drones which shut down airports across Europe turned out to be nothing to do with Russia or not drones at all. And he said that one of the risks here is that we risk seeing a Russian hand behind every accident or mishap. Mark Galeotti says, in June, he was heading back on the Eurostar from Rotterdam. Train services were disrupted by the theft of 600 metres of copper cable near Lille. And everybody, as staff and passengers, all assumed that Moscow was behind it. And in fact, it was just people stealing copper cables, as people so often do. And so even if they're not as powerful as we think they are, but we can see the hand of Russia in everything.
That astonishing destabilisation takes.
Yes, bullies know a great deal about that. And Putin was trained and raised by the greatest bullies there are. The secret police in Russia. Also in judo, again, Putin's a tiny little guy, but he was moderately skilled at judo, which I spent some time with when I was younger. And intimidation works incredibly well. If you just flick somebody a certain way, you don't have to move them. If they remember being thrown once, they can be scared. You see it in sporting events. Momentum can go really quickly, but in judo, it's visceral. The person's sweating and you're holding each other. You're literally looking in their eyes or touching their bodies and stuff. Putin did that for years and years and years. He knows that power hinted at is really, really powerful. On the other hand, I also point out that there is it is the efforts of the weak. It's Britain during World War II, it's much more than me, did incredibly skillful stuff with propaganda and sabotage. But of course, at the end, needed armies to do the final deed. It could be things are fundamentally different today that I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things about what Britain did in terms of sabotage is they realised that there was a risk in trying to encourage people to do sabotage precisely unless and until you had the military force to then go in behind it. So, and because you're putting people at risk, your own people at risk, and Russia doesn't seem to care particularly about that, people who are sympathetic. And so one of the British commanders said, we'll put in, you put in the grains of sand into German machinery. We've got the big bombs. You worry about the grains of sand. But every time you are trying to get somebody to do that, you are obviously, sort of throwing them under the bus potentially, because you have to be able to back them up.
And it is the grains of sand that count, isn't it? Because the headline in the Times is, when your Wi-Fi is down, and blame Putin. These are not big bombs. These are not hugely expensive strategic gestures. They're just a little bit of an irritation, which can actually screw your whole day.
I suppose if if something is on a knife edge, that can make a difference. If there's an enemy who you really who you really are upset about, the fact that they irritate you in small things afterwards won't change your view. You won't say, well, I'm going to give up this vendetta. But if there's somebody that you don't really know or care about, if you ask most people in Britain or America the details of where Ukraine is, what the population is, and some of the basic history, they'll have no idea. They'll have seen cute videos on TikTok of one sort or another. So if it's something is marginal, and this is like kind of irritating an aspect of it, you might just slide away. It's sort of like a part of the city that you don't really care about or you're a bit nervous about. There's 1 or 2 bad incidents, you just stay away from that part of the city. So this is a case where the grains of sand might be enough. Yes.
Let's head back to Tallinn. Petri Burtsoff, Monocle's Helsinki man, has nipped over. I don't know whether this is a good or bad thing, Petri, but we're coming back to you as promised. You had a glass of Glühwein 40 minutes ago. Can you do speaking on the radio?
Just about, Emma, just about. And I actually went for a I went for a top up, believe it or not. But I have good news for you. I actually took some searching, but I found a non-alcoholic Glühwein, and I was very wise. I take my job very seriously, as you know, Emma, and I went for the non-alcoholic one. It was sitting between. Check this out. He was sitting between a limoncello Glühwein and a Jägermeister Glühwein. I don't know. I mean, we can do a quick poll in the studio, which one you would have gone for. But I opted for the non-alcoholic standard Glühwein. Well, I guess not standard if it doesn't have alcohol, but yeah, no limoncello, no Jägermeister for me.
Okay, which one are we having? Jägermeister or limoncello, Terry Stiastny?
Oh, I think definitely limoncello.
Absolutely. Now,
Same here too.
Now, you don't drink, do you?
I don't drink, but I deduce that a lemon, a citrus fruit, was at one point connected with this. And if there's that, I'll happily go for it.
It's a health drink.
It's a health drink. When my kids were little, I told them that the purple stuff in the center of donuts is vegetable matter. That's why we can have donuts.
Yes, and that's wonderful. And which one am I going for? Probably going for I think the idea of hot limoncello is something that could make me quite ill quite quickly. A Jägermeister, I think I'll go for the herbal tea option. I'll go for the Jägermeister. Which one would you go for, Petri?
Well, I already went for the I went for all of them. I went for the non-alcoholic one, but I mean, if it was my first one and I could allow myself some more alcohol, I would probably go for. I would actually go. I would go for the Jägermeister one, just to because who knows? Maybe those two flavors will actually. I don't like Jägermeister per se, but if it's combined with Glühwein, who knows? Maybe the spiciness will sort of even out the sharpness of the Jägermeister. But this will be for the next year's Christmas show, because I think the thought of having sort of like 21% Glühwein and then all Jägermeister added into it is not very enticing. No, I have to be up on my feet tomorrow morning to pick up 10 kilos of pork.
Right, okay. Talk us through the pork, Petri.
Well, pork is, of course, a Finnish Christmas staple. Anybody who hosts nice Christmas dinner at their house, like I will be hosting. So you have to serve pork. There's no Finnish Christmas without pork. I don't know how vegans or vegetarians what they serve. Actually, I do know they serve this Satan pork.
Satan pork?
Yes. I've seen that's a thing, I think, and I've seen a tofu pork as well. But yeah, I'm gonna pick up. Going to the butcher's, going straight to the source, picking up 10 kilos because there's a lot of people coming over. So picking up 10 kilos of pork, then putting it in the oven, 115 degrees Celsius in a long time, maybe like 7-8 hours. Then putting a nice sort of a mustard layer on top of it, and then back sort of a higher temperature, roasting it, and then it will be lovely. But I need to do that. I only have one oven in the house. I also need to cook, I believe, 4 different types of casseroles. They don't all fit in one. So I have to make the pork first and then let it sit. So Monday is for cooking pork and Tuesday is for cooking all the casseroles. And then Wednesday, we celebrate Christmas on the Christmas Eve mostly. So, Wednesday when Christmas Eve comes, it's like rest day for me.
Absolutely. An intimate view of Petri's kitchen. No chicken nuggets, though, and you know why I'm asking you this.
Yes, oh my God. No chicken nuggets, but Emma, are you going to set this up? Or
no, you do the whole thing, Petri.
Yes,
you're good at this.
Yes, so
if you don't mind.
Not at all. So I went to interview Santa Claus in Lapland on Monday. And so I got into this... one of the several sort of Santa theme parks in Rovaniemi, Lapland's biggest city, and so I wait for my moment with the big man, and I start feeling peckish a little bit, and I'm like, okay, well, what do they have to eat at it was called Santa Park. So I go to the restaurant, very nice Christmas themed restaurant, and I asked them, hey, so what do you have? Sort of expecting all kinds of nice Christmassy treats, and they said, sir, we have sausages and we have chicken nuggets and chips. So I was like, okay, well, let's go for the chicken nuggets then. So that was my sort of experience of what I don't know if Santa himself eats the nuggets or if it was just 99% of the crowd were children under 6, and then there was me. So maybe the chicken nuggets were a hit amongst them. Maybe pork and different casseroles wouldn't have been such a big hit. But there you go. Now you know what's on offer in Santa's in the actual place where Santa lives.
David.
The next time that you face that difficulty, there's some reasons for choosing differently. The word chicken nugget is brilliant marketing. It's brilliantly chosen. The word should not be nuggets. I've looked into this. Think if it was labeled chicken residue, right? And that's what it is. With enough spices and colorings on it and deep frying, you can barely taste the stuff, which I can't specify on a family program, that goes into it.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. David Bodanis on that note. Terry Stiastny, Petri Burtsoff, you may now drink the limoncello. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio. That's all the time we have for today's programme. Thank you to our producers, Desiree Bandley and Mariella Bevan, and our studio engineer, Mariella Bevan, here in London. I'm Emma Nelson. Monocle on Sunday is live again next week. But for the next week, may I wish you a very, very Merry Christmas. Goodbye. Thanks for listening.